podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network. Sports Social.
The Sports Social Podcast Network is delighted to be supporting this year's Sports Podcast Awards, recognising the sporting podcasts that are top of their game. And now it's your turn to lend your support to your favourite sport podcasts. Voting is open now, which means you can get behind your favourite shows and show your appreciation for the hard graft they put in, keeping you entertained and informed on whatever sport it is you follow. There are 21 categories to vote in, including football, tennis, golf, rugby and loads more, and voting is dead simple. Head to sportspodcastawards.com, vote now and be part of the action.
So attention cricket clubs and cricketing family, are you ready to step up to the crease and make a long-lasting impact on your club's legacy? Listen up, we've got something special for you. Introducing Fund It Now, the revolutionary fundraising platform that's changing the game for cricket clubs everywhere. With Fund It Now, clubs of all sizes can create a lasting legacy by selling personalised plaques to their passionate members, supporters and cricket club family.
That's right, Livo. Fund It Now has already left its mark on some of cricket's most iconic venues like Lords, the home of cricket, Somerset County Cricket Club, and with projects such as the Father Time Wall and Somerset Legends Wall.
There's the best part, Hugh. There are absolutely no upfront costs. Fundraising has never been more simple or accessible.
Imagine walking around your club's ground or up to the pavilion and seeing a bespoke wall of dedication, celebrating the history of your club and supporting its future with every plaque. It's like your club's very own shrine to the sport we all love.
And getting involved couldn't be easier. Simply visit Fund It Now's website at funditnow.co.uk to get started today, or drop them an email at info@funditnow.co.uk to learn more. It's time to rally your supporters and start raising money like never before. And don't forget to tell them you heard it from us at the Premier League Cricket Show.
So what are you waiting for? Join the ranks of clubs and grounds like Somerset County Cricket Club and Lords and make your mark on cricket history.
Visit Fund It Now today and start building your fundraising platform. That's funditnow.co.uk. Fund It Now, where passion meets purpose at your cricket club, and begin creating your own legacy. So welcome everybody to another Premier League cricket show, and once again we're joined by someone with quite a lot of cricketing experience actually, but despite his 270 plus wickets on play cricket and his 1,005 runs for his current club, we ain't going to talk much about that today. And the reason being is we thought it was about time we spoke to this guy. We've been chatting about it for a while, myself and you, about other bits and pieces we're going to look outside of just normal Premier League and NCCA cricket. And it's come across that friends of ours have already been working with this guy from a charity called Opening Up Cricket. So if you don't know it already, you're going to hear all about it tonight from the founder and the guy behind Opening Up Cricket, Mr. Mark Boyns. How are we doing, Mark?
I'm all right, thank you. Although I will just say to start with, I don't like my play cricket numbers being quoted in public.
Mark, I can quote you a play cricket number that you will enjoy, in that you are the earliest member of play cricket we've interviewed on this pod. You are number 22045. So we've not interviewed a person with the play cricket number lower than that, which is also a sign of your age. So maybe it's not such a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Even I didn't know that was coming. I tell you that. I mean, this is the sort of information as to why Hugh is with us on the pod.
It's called looking in the URL, but yeah, apart from that, genius.
Absolutely. Hey, Mark, great to join you at last. I've been listening to a couple of episodes recently myself, in particular with one of your is she a trustee or an ambassador, Kate Cross? Just tell everybody from the get-go, what is Opening Up Cricket all about?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Opening Up Cricket exists to promote mental well-being and suicide prevention through our sport, and we've been going since 2014. I'll come a bit later to the origins in that respect, but what we were saying before we started recording is quite pertinent to it, in that having been around for a little while now, and typically what we do is go out and visit clubs, ideally in person, but of course online as well. And what I've noticed about the theme particularly of the mental side of the game, or the mental health benefits cricket can give us is that there's so many universal things across the club game. And whether you're working with a village club with one side on a Saturday, or you're working with some of these clubs that dominate across their league and then the country as a whole, the same kind of things that draw people into cricket and give us a great experience are also things that can help us health-wise. And you're pushing on an open door a lot of the time when you're trying to promote these themes, because people look around and say, well, that's what cricket is.
Yeah.
And if I mention it to people who don't play cricket or team sports, they're looking for something which our great sport provides. So in that sense, it's easy to get the conversations going.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's challenges around whether people want to engage with something that can be quite personal. They might feel it's not for them, and so on. But yeah, really, it's cricket driven, and it's looking at how we use our sport for a wider good.
Definitely. I think if I'm reading between the lines there, a lot of what you've just said is going to come back to potentially one word that I use a hell of a lot on the podcast. It's about community, and what it is a community, whether it be that small little one at Sefton Park Cricket Club where you're at, or whether it be the Liverpool District Comp community, the wider Northwest community, or let's be honest, me and you were talking before, and the amount of clubs around the country you can talk to about, we're all talking that same language, and it is a language that we have from cricket, isn't it?
Yeah, it is the community, the connection. We typically will talk about, in various levels of detail, the 5 ways to well-being, which straight away ends up sounding a bit clinical, and it might be that people are thinking, oh, what's this got to do with me? But when you start mentioning those things about what we get from the connections, then you just get the nods and the people realizing that it is something that they do, or they could do better as well. So one of the most common themes, if clubs or individuals are looking at a topic to follow on from an initial session that we do, it'll often be around things like team environments, cultures, and things like that. And we're fortunate that we can draw on the experience of people that are in our team, but also just the depth of the conversations that have taken place over these 10 years or so, where as much as you hear things that are in common, there'll always just be a slightly different way that people phrase it, or their experience or an example that then just refreshes it, and then it might fit that next club in a certain way, and you think, right, this club reminds me a little bit of another one that I was at, which might be 100 or 100 or 200 miles away, but there's just some of those things that seem to be consistent even without any design of meaning that.
When you go into these clubs, does it take a bit of time to break down the first walls that people have put up around themselves?
It can do, yeah. What I found, the journey, for want of a better term, has been that at the very start, it would have been me giving an offer, or in some cases, really trying to almost invite myself along to start this off. And then whenever it was, the tipping point was that now people will get in touch themselves and say, we'd like to do this because we've got our reasons for that. And with that, you generally will have someone who's advocated for it, whether it's the captain or it's a group of players or someone who's a significant figure at the club. That does make it easier to have that bit of buy-in. But still, if you're going to be talking about things which are typically things that people might keep close to themselves and not be a regular topic of conversation, even in a world where mental health is something which does pop up quite a lot more frequently than we'd remember from when we were younger, it still is something where you do have to constantly think about, what's my best way of trying to phrase this? What's my best way of getting people's engagement and their attention and making it relatable to them? So that still is something. And of course, you go away and you hope that it's landed with people, but you're never 100% sure. But it's sort of the act of doing it is what keeps me going, because I feel still that it's an important thing to do. I wouldn't give my time up like I do if I didn't. So that is like my own feedback of thinking, right, have I done that? Have I given the best account of myself? Have I got across what Open Up Cricket represents? And then if people do something with that, then that's it. That's all the better. But yeah, all I can do is sort of get myself in there and try and do the best of getting across what we believe in.
Definitely. If you go back 10 years ago now when you started, I'm sure, I'm presuming the first session you did must have been at Sefton Park potentially,
Yeah.
or very, on the back of the reasons, which we'll come to in a second, to why that you started. But did you find that it was, on the back of Hugh's question, difficult to get the numbers up to start with? It might be 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And now when you sort of go into a club, I've seen photos of you with 10, 12, 15, 20 people quite easily.
Yeah, definitely. I think at the beginning, I was actually, to be honest, quite unclear not what I was talking about, but what I was trying to get out of it, because it was a reaction to a particular event.
Yeah.
So I felt, I know I want to do something, and I know that I've got to let people know a bit more about what had happened and how it might be relatable or relevant to them. But then as time has gone along, I've definitely developed a confidence in the fact that a set of things which come up each time are going to be things which I think are important to people in cricket and in life in general.
Yeah.
Although I will just say, one thing that's interesting is the most common thing, and I've got to be honest here, that I'll get from clubs when I go there is they'll say something along the lines of, "Oh, I thought we'd have more here," or they're a bit sort of disappointed at the uptake still. And that's not to sort of mark me down, but I think there is still, it's a constant challenge for me, for Open Cricket, and then working with the clubs to make people understand or make them believe that it's something that is really worthwhile in their time. And of course, we know people are dead busy.
Yeah.
It's a big club where they're training 2 nights a week, and you've got people flying off playing different competitions during the week. It just might be that at the end of their Thursday night session, they just want to get home and see the family. And of course, you don't want to stand in the way of anyone doing that. But yeah, it is a little bit something you reflect on and thinking, okay, could the numbers have been more? You kind of look at the size of the club. I look at the size of my club and the extent to which people engage. And I always think there could be better buy-in, but that's really on me, especially as I'm there regularly, to think, how can I tweak this? How can I find a different way of trying to get it across to people?
I suppose, mental health support and discussions is not necessarily something people think they need to do or need to go to until it comes into their lives, and it can come into their lives in a rush, as obviously many people, including yourself, have found out. Going back to when it started, is this something you were trained to be able to do, or is it something that you've just sort of learned on the job as you've felt the need to do it?
Yeah, a bit of both, actually. In one sense, I'm trained in that my day job as a teacher, so I'm quite used to delivering, if you will, those kind of things. But the actual content and the specifics, so I teach history, so it's quite removed from the topics that we cover. That's been something that over these years I've picked up with bits of training that I've done, different conversations, different learning along those lines, which I've always had a bit of a debate about, thinking, is this something I should go down the line of it being what I do, full stop? But I think there's sometimes, and I get this, remember a couple of conversations where it can connect with people a bit more when you're saying, look, I'm effectively just like you. I'm someone who's absolutely obsessed with cricket, someone who loves being around a cricket environment. I know, and I'm sort of this sort of joke at my expense with people that know me about sort of how interested I am in the minutiae of club cricket and the statistics, stuff like that. So I know, like, the club game. So I'm always like someone they would have a contact with already at their club, turning up, and hopefully that does help, rather than it being someone who's from an organisation that's dedicated to it, but it's something outside of cricket. Having that bit of being very much I hasten to call myself a cricketer, but being someone involved in cricket can certainly help with that. And it's that balance between it's cricket specific, and then some of the things about the signposting to help that's available, some of the things that you've got to get right when you're mentioning, whether it be statistics or the way you talk about things, has been a gentle evolution over this decade or so.
Definitely. I think I'm listening to you talk there, and I'm listening in my earphones at the same time to the episode with Kate recently. because there's so many of the things you've just discussed there resonate from it. And the fact that she came at it from a cricketing perspective, but with a very personal perspective as well, and then realised that everything in her mental health, I'll use the word mental health issues, but the things that she went through for a while, actually, she wanted to bring it through to her day job as well as her night job, inverted commas, when she's not actually playing cricket. And one of the things that fascinated me the most was when she talked about sleep. It's one of my favourite subjects in the world. And the way she talked about sleep was just fascinating, because that resonates with absolutely everybody. There's no two ways about it. And I think, to walk into a cricket club and talk about the minutiae and the statistics, brilliant. But actually, you just say, let's talk about how you sleep, guys. Let's talk about when you go. And it's that sort of bringing it down to that level. Nobody can argue with that, can they?
No. And the sleep thing, now that you mention it, I was really glad that Kate mentioned that, because it's something, personally, that if that's not going well, I know that for me is something I've got to be really careful of here. I'm at high alert that this is effectively that bad for me, and it's still something that can be really overlooked in society. And if it's a chance to speak to people about something that can be not necessarily, it's not always easy to remedy problems with your sleep, but something that it is easy to be more aware of. If we can use a cricket environment to help people with that, it might have absolutely nothing to do with the sport, but it's being in the conversation with someone that you've got because of a cricket contact that can be the ones which spill over into it. But then equally, the conversations you have with people who they take the message about health and well-being and really look at thinking, where does this apply in terms of performance? Because we try and make a hook for people by saying the kind of mental skills that are practiced by the elite athletes the world over, if you just take the same technique, you can apply that and use it for your health and your well-being if you're not someone who's interested in performance. And then you can put it back the other way. So when we talk about, say, mindfulness, or we look at keeping a journal or practicing gratitude, or even, say, getting the right amount of sleep and rest, some of the players, you see the cogs turning around going, okay, I'm looking to squeeze a bit more out of what I'm doing this season. That might work for me. And that's brilliant, because that's looking at health and well-being in a really proactive, positive way. And that's the kind of conversation that is more likely in a club. People saying, this has helped me go to this next level. I'm now someone who's consistently scoring more runs. How's that happened? Is it just your physical technique? No, actually, I do a bit of this. Oh, fantastic. Someone else might try it, and then they say, do you know what? That helped me deal with the stress I've had at work, or a difficult breakup, or money worries. And then you're suddenly starting to get this as a conversation for more people, rather than, like Hugh said just before, it's something that people are reactive to, and there's something quickly that they urgently feel they have to address, rather than it being something we look at as part of our day-to-day life.
It's an incredible way of sort of twisting the way people think and the way they say things. And I'm going to use an example that Hugh will remember very clearly. We interviewed a gentleman months ago called Teague Wiley, who's an up-and-coming Australian batter. Looks as though he could go a long way with the Australian side. We'd love to see him just, if he ever pulls a baggy green on, me and Hugh are just going to be jumping up and down left, right and centre. But what stuck with me from the conversation we had with him, I was using with my juniors that I coached the week after. Because you get a junior who's not scored runs for 3 or 4 weeks, and you can see them, the confidence has gone out. Teague said, dead simple, and he's a proper cricket one. If I play 20 times a season, I expect to get out 19 times. And I expect to get out 19 times, and so what? It's anything less than that, I've done really well. And to take that to an 11-year-old then and say, well, why not think about that? You're supposed to get out sometimes. It doesn't really matter, and twist that around in their mentality. And you can see the sponges, aren't they, the kids in particular? You just go, actually, just thinking about it another way. And I think that's what I've picked up from the episodes I've listened to so far, in that it is about making people think about what they already know, to be frank, but actually just making them physically reverse engineer it almost, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really good example. Teague has worked a lot in the past with a guy called Tom Scollay, a fantastic coach over in Australia. And what he's been typically very good at over the years, and perhaps ahead of the curve of a lot of coaches, is approaching the mindset and the mental side of it as the dominant theme, and how if that's not right, your physical stuff is not going to work. And having that sort of ability to be able to stay a bit more level and be able to embrace almost when things aren't going well, and working out how to get those sort of, even sometimes there's the small wins, which can sound throwaway and a little bit cliche, but you might get out for naught, but have you learned something from that? So I remember Stephen Waugh. I mean, I talk about him quite a bit, and then this was betrayal of my sort of my age and everything like that. But what a brilliant example! Someone who was a compulsive hooker and puller of the ball, loved that shot, but he's coming through international cricket at a time where you've got a battery of fast bowlers for the West Indies who are really good at bowling short balls, and you are going to get out. So he had the choice between, do I put these shots away a bit more, or do I keep getting out like this and finding excuses? So for his discipline to say, I'm going to play that shot a bit less, the ultimate learning, so powerful. And the mental side of his game is probably what he's mostly known for, and he's still like, his name echoes in terms of like that mental strength. And that strength comes from something which I remember this example he gave around, I think Justin Langer referred to the example, but it was something Waugh did as captain, where he said really openly in his own way, at a particular point, as a captain, as a player, he was really struggling. And he said this to the players who would have been, and I think Langer was saying he was so inspired by that, because you expect someone to just be trying to go, I can get through this, I'll get through this, I'm tough, I'm hard, I've got the answers. But being that honest and saying, look, you know what, I'm not dwelling on the fact that I'm struggling at the moment. I'm not going to let that be what my default is, but I've got to say at the moment I am, and I'm going to work hard at doing something. But letting other people know made them think, actually, yeah, you know what, it's not all plain sailing. And those examples, when they come from a mindset or an attitude, they sound cricket things. They sound like these great little things we say over a pint after the game, or when we're just chatting about the sport. But it's like, just take a moment to think about how profound sometimes these things are for the rest of our lives, and how we deal with things.
Yeah.
And then we just know that cricket isn't just something we do at the weekend, or we do more than at the weekend. It's something which has this force, which is like, whoa, this changes or makes my life better for it.
It's a lovely book out, and I'm sure you're well aware of it, The Winner's Mindset, by Shane Watson. And it's a cracking read if anybody's not read it. And it applies to your life. It's not really a cricket book. I didn't take it as a cricket book. Obviously, it's full of cricket stuff. But it's about Shane's sort of struggles, particularly after the death of Philip Hughes, where Shane was essentially terrified, as a large amount of the cricket community, the playing community was. He was there when Philip Hughes was killed. And his struggles to deal with that and to perform in his day job. My day job is sitting behind a desk tapping away. His day job is in front of millions, people tearing him to shreds because he's getting out, he's kicking him off middle stump. And there's a big period there where he was terrified for his life, and he sort of reset. He was able to go away, get some help, reset, and then his performances, particularly in the IPL, just took off. And it was incredible and he broke it down. So he breaks it down in the book into small segments, little things he's doing, things he's doing when the bowler's coming in, talking about Ricky Ponting's approach when bowlers come in, just little tricks to help his performance. It's a remarkable book. And it's amazing, as a player and a child coming up, and, you never taught any of this. It was about technique. It was about watching the ball and all this kind of stuff. Shane was talking about watching the ball, but you're not watching the ball. You're saying to yourself, watch the ball, but you can't watch the ball, really. The ball's coming down its speed. What you are doing is concentrating. You're blocking everything else out from your mind by saying, watch the ball. And that's what Ricky was doing. But it took Shane sort of 10 years to ask him.
Yeah. And I think the more we see those examples, the more then you pick them up in the subtle messaging that comes out from these top players, particularly. One of the challenges I give sometimes when I'm at clubs is we all love it, don't we? Those stories from people like Shane Watson, Stephen Waugh, Justin Langer, Josh Butler, anyone you can think of, Alistair Cook. But I look at it and say, who in your own club is someone that you can learn something from. Because with the best will in the world, you're probably not going to get to sit down regularly and chat with these world-class players. But there'll be someone in your dressing room or in your wider club who does something that gets them the results that they do. And they could be someone that, for one reason or another, they could have been a professional cricketer, they didn't quite make it. There's loads of factors that are there. But in the club game, they dominate, or they're someone that's capable of having these exceptional performances. And it's easy to just think, they're sort of better at batting or bowling. But do they have something they do in their routine? Do they approach it in a certain way? What is their mindset? How do they think about? And batting's generally the one I come back to with this. But what do they consider to be a failure or a success? And just asking that person, what we had at my club, and he'd be terribly embarrassed to be mentioned because he's such a modest person. Rob Horton, who took 1,000 league wickets for the club, superb slow left arm bowler, always working on his game. But people would just look at his outcomes and think, Rob's just a great bowler. And I used to love asking him about, what happens with this, or just watching him and doing a little bit of work with him at the end of his playing career about just standing there and catching the ball for him because he wanted to practice bowling, but then maybe asking how long does it take you to get back to your mark? Is it always the same? Is it more if you get hit for a six? How do you deal with that? And seeing if little bits of that could rub off and pass on to other people who didn't ask him. And I think in every club that can be something which we get the opportunity to learn from others. And those connections and those conversations are also ones where we might learn a little bit that helps us with dealing with other things. Like they deal with their cricket by saying, look, I'm here to primarily enjoy it, whether I get runs or not. And you sort of think maybe that might be the way I'd get more from it, and my weekends would be better.
So stupid. No, don't be so stupid.
Yeah,
Definitely. I've got to say, did you hear that, Hugh? Liverpool and District Com, slow left armour. What a surprise! He's one of the legends in the game around there, is Rob. But another bloody slow left armour is all I'll say. You got me thinking straight away there, Mark. I'm picturing people who are at my club or local clubs and thinking exactly. I'll name one of them, Paul Borrington, ex-Derbyshire player, who plays at Ticknell, not too far from me, and he played for Derbyshire. He was a pro. He's then come down. He now works at Denston School. But I remember talking to one of his coaches, Howard Dytham, who's a level 4 coach, about what Paul does well and he said dead simple. He goes in with a mindset that says, I'm not getting out, and I don't care how long it takes me to stay in there to start building the runs. He said he'll bat 30 overs and get 30 runs. But if he's in it 45, he's got 75, 80, 100. And he's just, and he'll block that first 30 overs out. Just, I'm going to stay there. And that's come from his experience. There's no two ways about it. And learning those things. And everyone's got one at that club without a shadow that we can think of. And it might be that the guy who never gets out. It might be the guy who's there for far longer in the nets than somebody else. It might be the guy who never practices, but just turns up and is on it every single time. And it goes back to that routine, doesn't it? And what's right for one person is so different to somebody else.
Yeah, and as you mentioned in that, you're saying, say someone who doesn't train and they manage to do it. People who fit a particular role in a team, and you see this fascinating people perhaps moving between clubs for varying reasons, and they can be at the same standard, but they might just have a particular role in the team where they flourish, and then they get put in something slightly different, and then they seem to be a different player. And those little things, and you're kind of there thinking, what's influenced that? Can it be the small little things? A few of them adding up together have made a big difference. And I think ultimately, all this stuff that we've mentioned here, some people might be listening thinking, where's this fit into mental health? Aren't we drifting off a little bit? But absolutely, it fits in, because we talk a lot about the continuum around mental health or any health. And at one end, it's the sort of peak performance, your mental fitness, the absolute best you can be. And for some people, that's the way they are. They're sort of pumped up like that. And the other end is the opposite, where it's the worst it could be. And of course, we're all somewhere between those two extremes. But anything about how our mind works, how we deal with things, setbacks or successes, how we interact with others about that is still part of mental health. And if that's more of the discussion and it's more proactive and positive, I think we've got a better chance of having conversations that might mean that bit more a bit further down the line.
Let's go back 12 years ago to that awful day that you went through with your friend Alex, and what happened there. And was it, the only way I can ask this, was it almost one of those things that within weeks from Alex leaving us, you went, I've got to do something about this? Or was there a period for yourself before you said, I'm ready to?
Yeah, I think, the initial bit when I found out Alex had died, and particularly as he died by suicide, it was the whole sort of really difficult to process and trying to understand what had happened, why it had happened, and still, to be honest, don't have those answers. I think in the first instance, there was a will to want to do something, because first and foremost, this was someone that I cared about, and I thought then, and I still do now, as someone who was special. So someone that people, if they spent time with him, would realise he was sort of different in a good way. So that was like always there, that I wanted to do something, but I just wasn't quite sure. I suppose in my own life at the time, I wasn't really sure of a lot of things. So as time went along, that pre-season, it was clear I and others wanted to do something in the following season. So whether it be fundraising, we had a charity game and that kind of thing. But I was at the beginning of that game, we had someone come to visit from a charity called State of Mind, who have worked more broadly now, but then it was very much a rugby league organisation. And the guy there, Phil Cooper, gave a session with his colleague, Steve McCann. And there was a bit, I don't know whether it was a particular phrase or something, where I almost felt like something clicked, and it's like, this is the kind of thing that I reckon needs to happen in cricket. So from there, it moved forward ever so slightly to then get into the close season, where I was thinking this might be the best time, even though people aren't typically around their clubs as much, to have that conversation, because we lost Alex in the close season. He was someone who missed playing cricket. It had such a big focal point for him. So having those very first conversations, going to clubs when it was, as dark as this, bad weather like this, struggling to maybe get people to come along to work out what the hell is this guy going to be talking about. When that started to happen, and to today, I've just always thought this is the thing that I need to do. To begin with, it was I think some element of guilt, because I felt that I could and should have done more to help Alex. As time went on, managed to get a little bit more of an equilibrium and thinking I still think that's true to a degree, but there's not really much point me just wallowing in that. What can I do which might be more positive? And that's where I've got to now. And then, of course, with the years passing, my life experience has changed. But honestly, the stuff that I've said at the beginning in 2013, 2014, the examples might be different, the conversations have evolved, but the message is absolutely the same as we've gone across the whole period.
Suicide is such a emotive subject. It's something you never think you'd come across. You can't fathom the realities of suicide, really, in terms of what how it would affect you and why anyone would do it. Yet I know personally, I coached two kids whose parents, one parent has killed themselves. When it happens, you're absolutely shocked. And there's cases where it's like a virus. In teenagers, young adults, it can, one friend can commit suicide. 2 months later, another one, and it can run through a community like a virus. It's something. The cure is prevention, isn't it? It's this is the cure. It's talking about it. It's opening up. It's giving people hope. It's giving people solutions and help. It's a preventative cure.
And it absolutely is. And the talking, even though it's something that's quite well rehearsed in society now, to say that talking is the right thing to do, we should do it. There are barriers in the way. There is challenges with health systems about how much capacity they've got for people, but that's still thinking about when we've gone quite a way down, and really when we've already got communities around us that have naturally conversations that go on that might just be extended, that don't have to be point blank conversations about suicide, but can be ones where people feel like they're a little bit more connected with people. The thing that always that I sort of come back to in my own reflections on this, and I don't think I've really said this sort of out loud before, is what I would like to do more than anything, if I got a chance to sort of speak to Alex again, is just put my arm around him and say, you know, I care. I want you to still be here. My life's better with you here. And that is selfish saying that. But getting rid of some of the stuff that might be the default, where we make fun, we have a laugh at things. And, you know, I love all that. It's brilliant. I love the banter. But sometimes when it's appropriate, just sort of saying, but really at the root of it is, I do care. And I'm someone who wants to tell people that. And if there can be people in their own way saying that to people they care about, that is something you remember. Because I've been fortunate enough to have someone say something similar to me when I was at the worst point in my life, and they really made me believe that if I was reaching a point where I felt I couldn't go on, they were an option to speak to. And I like carry that with me now, even though, you know, things are great, things are fine. But it's a privilege to know that someone cares that much. And we all do really care about someone like that. It might not be in our cricket life, but some of the bonds we get in sport, bloody hell, like the amount of time you spend with people, surely that's something that can be developed more.
Definitely.
Have you spent much time with the pro game? Because I feel the pressure within the pro game, and particularly something like cricket, which is pretty badly paid for the majority of professionals, and their livelihood is year by year, contract by contract. I really feel for the guys. You know, they're not. I mean, the England players as well, but the journeyman pro who's living their dream or their perceived dream, yet, you know, they're looking over their shoulder. They're only 3 innings away from the job centre. It must be very difficult.
Yeah, and that's picked up whenever I do get the chance to speak to current or former professionals. The thing that gets me sometimes is we talk about cricket a lot of the time from the perspective of the beauty and the benefit of it and how much of a release it is. And it's always quite sad that people who do it for a living get detached from the sport and why they started playing it, because there's worries about contracts, performance analysis, where they're going to be in 6 months, a year. So yeah, I mean, those things, I think, as much as they're very much the different things because it's their living and they get the exposure to things that we wouldn't in the club game. Some of those things that run through anyone's experience of cricket, being judged by the statistics, being nowhere to hide, you know, like we were joking earlier about people's play cricket numbers, it's like they are there. Yeah. People will make a judgment on what kind of a cricketer you are based on that. Now, for me, couldn't give a monkeys, but if I'm someone who's trying to gain a pro contract or keep one, those numbers there are almost what is going out as part of whatever the conversations are or whatever the judgment is. That is, you know, can be brutal, and people's experience of it would certainly attest to that.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I love the way Bazball has been created by Brendan and Stokesy, the way they've gone about it. How many players have they picked in the last few years who, 10 years ago, everyone would have looked at the numbers and just gone, not a chance, forget it, full stop, end of story. Jacob Bethel, who's the new little superstar. There's nothing in his numbers that make you go, he's going to be an outright a superstar. If you look at his play cricket numbers, they're even worse. When he was with Kenilworth Wardens a couple of years ago, there's nothing there that says this guy's going to go from Premier League cricket to forcing his way to be number 3 again in the batting. But it's about what they see up here, isn't it? It is about what they see mentally and the roundness of that player rather than just what he hits, how he bowls, how he feels. I think that's so much more important, isn't it?
And Stokes as a leader, I'm sure a lot of people have seen that documentary about him, which is on Amazon Prime. But I make reference to the quote that Joe Root says about him in that documentary, and I might be slightly getting it wrong, I might be paraphrasing, but he talks about if there's a difficult situation, you don't have to look around for Ben Stokes. He's already coming towards you. And I think for all the things he will be remembered for as a cricketer, from the people who are outside of it, who are watching as fans, what a bowler, capable of winning the game with a bat, does brilliant things in the field, very inventive, creative, and in a lot of ways successful captain. But that other bit of the game about what he's like, how he is with people, there's all kinds of little anecdotes and stories around about the time he's taken to speak to people, or just how he's seen by those people who spend the most time with him. That would be what really, as much as it's nice to have all the numbers and those cricketing outcomes, that's surely what he'd be most proud of, and why those players do seem to want to go and buy into what he and the team want to do.
There's a nice, you mentioned Tom Scollay there, who we hope to have on the podcast in a few weeks. He's just put out a fairly recent one with James Bracey, who is a great chat, who was sort of catapulted into the England setup and wasn't really mentally ready for it. And that's one thing, the Stokes-McCullum axis, they're picking these guys and they are mentally ready to play. You know, Jacob Bethel, he's mentally... He looks like a 40-year-old. He's so calm. You know, people said, oh, he's not ready, he's too young. Mentally, bam, he's off. He's right there. I've got out for 10. All right, I'm just going to send this over the rope. Got himself 50 knots out. You know, he's just, they've taken a look at him and mentally, yep, he's ready. And at the highest level, that is of a higher value than technique, potentially.
Yeah, I think you got Stuart Broad saying... cricket's 90% mental, 10% technical. Stephen Waugh, again, who I always keep shoehorning into conversations, said something very similar in his captain's diary. And from a couple of things when I've spoken to pros about this, they've kind of indicated that the further you go through the game upwards in terms of standards, the more the mental bit just starts to dominate. I suppose we can think of when we were playing as kids, someone who might just be a bit bigger, who can hit it further, great. And then it moves up and you've got to deal with the pressures, the setbacks. And then you've got people, really, when you're reaching the test match or a sort of franchise level, these guys have got, you know, quite a lot of similarities in terms of their technical abilities. Obviously do it in slightly different ways, but it's then that the dealing with things becomes so important.
Yeah, Graham Swan was a good one to talk about his approach when he came. He had a very quick taste of international cricket, didn't he? And then he had a 6 or 7 year hiatus, and then came back in, and just mentally he was just there straight away. You know, he just knew he could do it, and he was comfortable. And he said it was easier than playing county cricket because of the pressures, the mental pressures that other people were feeling that he didn't seem to feel.
Definitely. I think one of the questions I've got for you, Mark, and I think it's very imperative to look at this in the round as well, is that you spend a lot of your spare time with opening up cricket and talking to clubs and players around the country. Who do you talk to for yourself and your own mental well-being? You've got great trustees around you, and you've got some great ambassadors that you work with. But who do you talk to?
That's a good question, and I do have to reflect on this quite a lot, because I think the thing that can be the most powerful is when someone does effectively practice what they preach. So if I'm saying to people, it's important to talk and we want to have these things, wouldn't be much good if I'm then going home, bottling everything up and not letting anyone know how I am. But what I've learned quite a lot from it is it's not going to be everyone that I talk to about it. It might just be certain people that I trust and have so on. So I've probably got 2 or 3 people in my life that at various times I will have those kind of conversations with, and they go back and forth between, how I am, how they are. And I find that to be such an important release. But trying more to do it as proactively as I can, not just waiting until I'm saying, things are bad, but actually, making it a habit to say, let's go for a walk or a cup of coffee or just chat on the phone. And even if things are going well, why are they going well? How are you dealing with that so well? But trying to be proactive, like I say, is the best way for the for the people that I come into contact with. But I always have to keep checking on that myself and realizing, when was the last time I really just sort of was able to give someone a little bit of how I'm thinking, and then and provide that for someone else as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was last winter in particular. I picked up on. I'm going to get this wrong. It was either Birkenhead Park, Wallasey, New Brighton, one of the clubs over there. All of a sudden, I started seeing they were going out for a walk on a Sunday morning, I think it was, and a bunch of the lads would turn up and they'd just go for a walk during the winter. And it was, I thought, what a great idea that is. 'Cause we all go from the end of September till whenever indoor net starts for a lot of people without seeing another cricketer. And then you come back and the routine starts. But what these guys did, took it upon themselves, said, right, we're going to go for a walk. And it might have been around Neston, I can't remember. And they'd just have an hour walking. And then they might have a pint afterwards. Surprise, surprise. But that to me was the archetypal way of saying tick. That's the community. That's the mental health being looked after. Happens to be the well-being and the walking as well. And that's, if clubs could learn from little things like that, it's always going to make a difference.
Yeah, and they're the best examples because there's nothing new to learn. It's something quite simple. Everyone can realistically replicate that. We don't need to learn anything particularly technical, but they're the ones that make the most profound difference. Like, for example, clubs will ask, a lot of the university clubs that we do sessions with will say, oh, how can we sort of build that team spirit or be more connected? And say, well, what about offering times for people to connect that might not just be training, going for a pint? It might be people think, actually, sort of something during the week, during the day, whatever it would be, might work for that. And throw in a few options at people. Now, I have been perhaps one of the world's least successful people at trying to get some of these things set up in my own club or different things. But I'm going to keep trying until I don't have any breath left, because I believe in it. And I think even if you just get one person to come along with you, they'll have a reason for wanting to do that. And that's a success. I tend to try and view it in that way now, rather than success or failure, saying, well, you know what, if I've had one person come for that cup of coffee, then they've had a chat, and that's fantastic. Of course, it'd be nice if there's 20 there, but people, and I was always the same, would be scared of making a start on something because perfection has to be the outcome, when actually do something is the best advice that I've ever had. Actually, just, we could talk about it. We could have this, make a list. What about for looking after your health and those that are in your club? What about do something? So those lads who went for the walk, that's it. They did something. Looks like it worked really well for them. Maybe that might make another club think, let us do our version of doing something next winter.
And if you take this back to performance, it's these community clubs, these clubs with the strongest communities, the biggest bonds. They're the ones actually who often perform well on the pitch. The two go hand in hand. You get your community and your bonding right. And like I said, the traditional bonding was a pint. Everyone out and got blasted on a Saturday night. Well, the communities have changed over the last 50, 60, 70 years. That isn't necessarily the way to bring a whole diverse community together, but things like walks and other things, absolutely brilliant. And you only have to spend some time with people at your club to realise that everybody's got a story, everyone's got some fun in them, and quickly you build friendships.
And if I use an example very close to Mark on that, Hugh, and he interviewed someone a few weeks ago for this one, Northern. You interviewed Chris Laker not too long ago. Northern's one of the biggest clubs in the country, one of the most successful in the country, the way they've gone about things. But they just have a way about them that is so community. We've spent a lot of time around them this year because they've got to 2 bloody national finals, and we've been with them on the journey and see what they've got. But you can see not just the players, but the amount of supporters that come with them to travel down to some of these places. It's phenomenal. I can't think of any other sport where it is you get 250 people coming down to Worcester to watch a game against a team from bloody Essex, and you lose, but guess what? You have a great time. And it's that community around them that makes all the difference to me. And Chris talked about it all the way through that podcast, didn't he?
Yeah, and Northern are such a good example. I reflected on this before and after I spoke with Chris about it. They're such a good example, whether it be on their social media or just if you're at that club, having played or watched there, at being so positive and looking for what's gone well in people's achievements. So they're so positive about their club. Like they'll almost, if you like, boast about what great facilities they've got, how well each team is doing, not just the first team, but all the way through to their various sections that play cricket. Individual achievements will be lauded. But again, it's not just if it's James Cole's, God knows how many runs he's got now in their first team, not just people like that, or Tyler McGladdery or Liam Gray, these like box office players, but people who might have got their first 50 for the seniors. In fact, I saw that on their social media this year. Brilliant, making people feel like they're part of something. And I think so many other clubs who might just, everyone's stretched for time and what have you, but if they want to pick something from a club like Northern, they might not be able to attract the players at the top end like them. Very few clubs have that quality of player. But there's things that they do which make people who play in second, third, fourth, and juniors and women's cricket there who love being there. And it's the kind of atmosphere that they create, which is through that positivity.
I'll encourage you to look at another club a lot further away, Woodhouse Grange up in North Yorkshire.
Yeah, been there.
Good friends of mine up there, and they did an amazing job in April this year when they were putting out their player sponsors. And, Dave Shanks and Finchy up there, they'd arranged for God knows how many bloody famous names to, introduce Mark Boyns, fourth team player, sponsored by, I don't know, Newsome Carpentry. And that's Joe Root saying it. You're like, and in their words, they treat every signing, whether it's a third 11 player, the same as a first 11 player. I thought that's a brilliant way to bring the club together, isn't it? And celebrate the whole thing.
Yeah, that's it. And community, by its nature, has to have that sort of inclusivity. And inclusivity means lots of different things, but essentially it is making people feel welcome and part of something. And that can't just be restricted to one type of player or one team. If it's a club rather than an 11, that kind of thing goes a long way.
Absolutely. I've got a couple of quick questions to finish off here, Mark. And, we could go on for hours on this sort of subject, but, first and foremost, where do you want opening up cricket to go? We'd love to be a part of what you guys are doing and talking about it, because what we're doing now is what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's another good question. I think ultimately open up cricket is sort of the way of getting it across. But my ambition, my goal is to have every single cricketer, every single cricket club having something that they do positively and proactively for people's health and well-being in their club or community using their cricket. Whether that's completely achievable just through opening up cricket, perhaps not, but we've got to set the goal high to try and keep pushing to that. What sort of gets me thinking about, I am going to this club, I'm going to arrange that session, I'll do the most I can. So I think it is just keeping the conversation going and getting it to reach different people in different ways and being excited about how the message can be refined and how people can engage with it on their own terms, but ultimately showing people that they care about, that they do care about them, and cricket being the way that we get them to do that.
Absolutely. And this community will go right back to the beginning. It's special. There's no two ways about it. And the fact that we can talk about clubs around the country and the names just roll off our tongues because we all know, that between us, we know them for various reasons. That doesn't happen in amateur football. I can tell you right now, that does not happen in non-professional football. I can name probably more amateur football clubs around Liverpool than most people, but that's because I was born and bred there. But I can't name them down in Haringey or down in cricket. Different ball game altogether, a different community.
Yeah, it is. It's for me. I try not to limit cricket to just saying, it's a sport or it's a hobby. I did an exercise with some players a little while ago where we'd look at, balance in our lives and how do we achieve it, and just swapping ideas and saying, well, where is cricket within this? And it seems to, like, for good or for bad, sometimes it can have an influence across so many different parts. But a guy said to me when I was at Darwin Cricket Club over in the Lancashire League that he wears his cap for his cricket club when he plays golf and things like that because it's part of his identity. And that, it was something I was like, yes, that's it. It's part of you just as much as he's a dad or he's a brother. What his job is, he also, for him, happens to be a player, a member, a coach at that cricket club. And having that in your life, we take it for granted. We all like to moan about our clubs. I've set records for moans about things at my club, and I'm sure I'll still have the odd little thing from time to time, but it's taking a step back and realising this has the potential to be really positively powerful.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect way to bring this conversation end, Hugh. There's absolutely nothing we've spoke about here, Hugh, that we can't disagree with, is there? I think I'm going to use something that Mark said as the sort of the summary. If you're thinking about doing something at your club, just do it. There's no two ways. Just do it. Don't worry. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be 26 people in a room. It could be 3 people having a coffee, as you say. Just do it and just have a chat and listen to Mark's podcast. It's called, guess what? Opening Up, isn't it? And, you can find it quite easily on all podcast players. Listen to the Kate Cross one. It's a really good start point, actually. It's a very recent one, but it's a great start point, isn't it? Pick 1 or 2 others to listen to. But, check out what these guys do on social media as well and reach out to them. If you want a half-hour session with these boys, you've actually got people up and down the country now starting to build 1 or 2 who can do this for you as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So please get in touch, whether it's to, as you've said, Ian, to have a session or even a question or bounce some ideas around. I love it. Swapping ideas with people on this, it gets me thinking, gets me going on that front. So any contact whatsoever. Love to hear from people wherever they are in the country. We'll get something sorted out.
Brilliant. Hey, Mark, many thanks for your time. You've definitely brought some new thoughts into my head once again, which is what this podcast does for me and you week in, week out, but in a completely different way. Congratulations on what you've built so far, mate. And you know what? Long back, take it further forward because it's something fantastic. And let you just work with that community that we call cricket.
Yeah. Thanks, gents. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for listening to the Premier League Cricket Show. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes and stay updated on all the latest news, views and discussions from around the Cricket's Premier Leagues. And be sure to follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram at TPL Cricket Show on both. Join the conversation, share your thoughts and connect with us and your fellow Premier League cricket fans. And hey, if you enjoyed the show, why not show us some love? Leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast platform as it helps other potential listeners to find us when they're searching for cricketing podcasts. Thanks again for being part of the Premier League Cricket Show family, and until next time, have a good one.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The Sports Social Podcast Network is delighted to be supporting this year's Sports Podcast Awards, recognising the sporting podcasts that are top of their game. And now it's your turn to lend your support to your favourite sport podcasts. Voting is open now, which means you can get behind your favourite shows and show your appreciation for the hard graft they put in, keeping you entertained and informed on whatever sport it is you follow. There are 21 categories to vote in, including football, tennis, golf, rugby and loads more, and voting is dead simple. Head to sportspodcastawards.com, vote now and be part of the action.